to embark on this Zoom adventure, and there are a couple Zoom tune-ups that I need to show you before you start teaching your students remotely using Zoom. The first thing we want to check is to make sure that we have all of those tools that we would like to use with our students. So head to zoom.us. These are things that you must do through the web portal. Click this sign in button and make sure that you sign in using your school email address. I'm going to sign in with Google because mine is linked to my Google account. So once we're into Zoom, we'll be taken to our upcoming meetings. And this is where you can pre-schedule meetings just by clicking here. You can also do that through the app, but they also give you the ability to do it on the web. But what I'd like to look at right now are the settings. So when we head to settings, there are 5 different categories of settings that we can do for the meeting, and some of them look at how we schedule the meetings, but what we want to really focus on right now, what happens when we're in the meeting. So let's click here, and this will just scroll down the screen. For example, you may want to turn chat off. You can also say you don't want the students to save the chat. So if I put a check mark here, this will prevent my students from saving the log of the chat. I can also turn off private chat here. So if I don't want the students to be able to message each other without me seeing it, by the way, those types of private messages will not show up in the log. Simply turn this switch off. If you like to auto save, you can turn that on. That will auto save the chats. Of course, it was changed because I changed the setting up here. So anytime you see this yellowish block, it's telling you that another setting is preventing this setting from working the way it normally does. If you don't like that chime, the doorbell sound when people enter your room, you can turn that on and off here. Mine is off right now, but you've been in Zoom meetings before, you've likely heard that doorbell sound. This is where you turn that on. You can send files through a chat message, but if you don't want people sending files, again, you can turn that off. Some other things to consider if you're co-teaching, you can look at this co-host option. That gives you the ability to choose someone else and make them a co-host. Here's another really important thing. I showed this in one of my videos. You can add a polling feature, but it may be off, so simply turn it on. You can create poll questions in advance right here in the web portal just by setting up your meeting in the portal, and at the bottom of the meeting settings you'll see add poll questions. So you can add those in advance. They are all multiple choice, just so you know. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit more here to pay attention to the things that we do as teachers. Here, if you don't want your students to share their screens, and that might be something you don't want them to do initially when you're first starting out, I have that off right now. So that does not allow people to share in my meetings at this point. Here's annotation. You want to make sure that is on. The whiteboard feature may be off. You definitely want to check that. But this one is really big. This is the one I had a call on. Somebody asked me, why don't I have the thumbs up, thumbs down, yes, no, faster, slower? It's right here, the nonverbal feedback. That may be off, especially if you're in that basic Zoom account and everybody's kind of been upgraded right now. That may be something you never checked before, but make sure nonverbal feedback is on. That's going to give you the thumbs up and the thumbs down. I also talked in one of my sessions about breakout rooms. We even used them. This is where those are turned on or off. Again, please make sure that you check these settings before you start, because you may be surprised when you run your first class that you're lacking some of the features you plan to use. And you can see there are tons and tons and tons of settings here, including whether or not you get emails when people are starting meetings or join meetings before you do. So all of this is in that Zoom portal at zoom.us, and then just click sign in. Now, 2 other really quick tips for you. Be sure to check out the Zoom blog, which is just blog.zoom.us. They have been updating this frequently. So for example, here is a recent article on securing your online classroom. So if you take a look at that, it's going to give you all kinds of tips on how to control things. So there's screen sharing we just talked about. The waiting room puts them all in a virtual queue until you show up. And again, here's tips on locking the chat, how to remove people. So this is definitely something that you may want to check out. Again, it's just blog.zoom.us, and they have been updating that frequently during this coronavirus pandemic. The final thing to mention is that we've all heard that Zoom lifted the 40-minute time limit for those basic free accounts that a lot of us are using right now. However, that is not something that happens automatically. So what your school administrator, your district administrator needs to do is to complete a form, which is on this page. And if you just go to the blog and look for a March 13th post, you'll see the details on this. Only one person needs to do this. But once this is filled out one time, and it will take Zoom up to 72 hours to approve it, your entire domain, the part that follows the @ sign and your email address, will be approved to have the extended time length. The 40-minute length limit will not be there any longer. This only needs to be done once. Someone may have already done it. But if you're signing into your district account into Zoom and you have a 40-minute limit, that tells me that someone has yet to do that, or it's inside that 72-hour time frame, and maybe it just hasn't been approved yet. But if that's not working, this is something you need to check into immediately. So those are my tips for Zoom. Hopefully this is enough to get you started and on your way.